Forgotten Soldier, Guy Sager, Chapter 12, third part. It was now 10 days since my return, which we had celebrated according to circumstances. In the windowless ISPA we were assigned for rest periods, we had emptied a 5-quart container of ersatz. No vodka, no biscuits, but then that's war. In any case, we had reserved the ersatz for me and my friends. The rest of the company might as well have been in limbo. Beyond the boundary of our friendship and indifferent to it, they washed their dirty feet in large dishes of faintly warmed water, or attacked their lice or organized lice races to pass the time. For a brief moment, we felt a sense of occasion, but that quickly faded. One can tell the same stories only a certain number of times. We very soon sank into the torpor, characteristics of soldiers of the front. Nothing was new to us. We had been through it all before, and even on days when our morale was relatively high, we felt constrained by the inevitable anxieties of the front. For 10 days we shuttled back and forth between our hole in the ground in the ISPA where we rested. Every 12 hours we tramped the half-mile which lay between our outpost and the shattered remnants of our village overrun by war. During the day we stared vacantly at the empty, frozen country beyond our hole. At night the fog limited our vision to 10 or 15 yards at most. We weren't yet trying to stop the enemy. Their front was still extremely fluid. From time to time, a few attempts at penetration, always motorized, forced us to open fire. And once, since my return, enemy tanks had appeared and fired at our frozen batteries. Otherwise, we had all the time in the world to observe the crystal structures of snowflakes against our infantry half-boots, which became as hard as wood during our 12 hours of duty, and softened again in the stable-like warmth of 60 bodies huddled together in the ISPA during our 12 hours off. Fires, of course, were streng verboten, as smoke would give away our position. Weissreidau often visited us. I think he felt especially warm toward our group, and with the veteran, able to speak directly as man to man. We young ones listened to them talking the way boys listen to their elders, and what we heard was always alarming. Our exhausted troops had abandoned Kiev, which in spite of everything remained a center of combat. We were still trying to hold on to the Dnieper, but even that famous barrage seemed to be doing us very little good. From Cherkasy to Kremenchuk, the Russians were on both banks of the river. They also held both banks of the Desna. In Nadrgailov, victory was no longer a possibility for us, and our men were faced with a choice of captivity or death. Fortunately, as our front was extremely precarious and shallow, we were only supposed to be covering the southern wing of the fighting. The area we were holding was as flat as a billiard table, and strong defense would have been difficult even with adequate supplies. On the 12th day after my return, we were attacked by Russian planes, which cost us many casualties. Later that day, a column of German soldiers struggled over the horizon, partially made up of troops pushed from Cherkasy. 7 or 8 ragged, famous regiments, overloaded with wounded, descended on us like a plague of locusts, ravaging and plundering our reserves. The intensity of the battle they had just survived could easily be read on their shaggy, exhausted faces. This fragment of the Wehrmacht, with worn-out boots, empty packs, and eyes glittering with fever, proceeded by 4 days the Russian thrust, which began at Kherson and pushed through to the west bank of the Dnieper. At precisely that moment, winter also began to attack Innerst. The thermometer suddenly plunged to 5 degrees below zero. On an evening of savage cold, the enemy reached our lines. The noise of their arrival preceded them, carried on the wind to the shivering bundles of rugs and blankets waiting behind frozen parapets. We listened as animals at bay listen to the pack closing in. For at least 2 hours, we lay with straining ears over enormous eyes staring fixedly through frozen films of protected tears. Although we could see nothing, voices kept announcing, "Here they are! Here they are!" Our tense imaginations invested the visible edge of our defenses with 1,000 imaginary movements, and 1,000 thoughts and visions whirled through our heads. Our distant homelands, our families and friends, and our desperate, passionate love. We imagined every possible outcome to the imminent fighting: surrender, captivity, flight, or death, a quick death, to be done with it all. Some grasped their weapons all the more firmly, dreaming of a heroic defense which would